Hello and welcome to the ESR Drop-in event this week on the Amazon test server. We're today here at Portsmouth doing DTM92 versus touring cars. I'm William and we're with Hunt.
Hey, that's it.
So this track's Portsmouth Club Circuit, and let's see who we have here today. First up, we have Brian Stevens in the BMW M3 from the 92 Touring Series. We have up next, also in the BMW M3, Michael Debris. Number 3, we have
Also in
George
the
Jorvin. Okay.
fourth we have Lezo. So that from Ukraine, also in the BMW M3. Fifth
And
we
then
have Chris Lorenzo, also in the BMW M3. Who isn't in the BMW M3? Then Jason Mons in the BMW M3 and Sean Kenny in the BMW M3 as well, from Touring Classics. Got a fairly one-sided field here, don't we?
Yep, very one-sided. And lastly, we have Luis Diaz, who's put up a very strong performance last week when we were in the TT Quados in the club circuit of not Denver, so many Z courses. Yeah, Denver Club. But yeah, he's really good as well. So he's in, I think, the DTM variant.
Quite a different track this time though. It's Portimao, a very flowy track.
Lots of hills on this track as well. Love hills, especially when you have cars like these, which really are all about getting the power on the road well and smooth.
Yes, and large runoff zones, so I do expect we'll see some slowdown penalties if those are enabled.
I'm pretty sure it's just the standards. Put your foot on the brake, let people go, slow down.
I think this track's kind of infamous for its slowdown penalties. Very large runoff zones everywhere. Does mean that the racing can stay close and people can race.
Definitely. It's also 3 times tire wear and 25 minutes on the clock when the race starts. No fuel though.
No pit stops, just expect some rather worn tyres probably.
Yeah, especially with the way people like to drive around here. Very easy to get on the power too early, and very easy to get on the brakes too late.
It does possibly mean we'll see some of the non-BMWs gaining a lot of speed at the end, because the BMWs do tend to get sideways, and we could see some very worn rear tyres.
Ooh, Dark A is bringing in a Mercedes. I think that's a Mercedes, isn't it? No, that's probably BM. And we have at least one person in the white Mustang GT DTM car.
Yes, Cannon's in the Tim Cannon is in the Mustang, and Paul Dark is in the DTM92 BMW. Not BMW, Mercedes.
Yeah. Yeah, DTM cars, especially that era, a little more distinct, but even now, especially, they are very, very similar aero kits. Yeah.
Well, not a lot of aero, to be honest, in these cars. I think the Mercedes has got the largest downforce of all the cars.
Yep. But the problem with the aero kit is, yeah, the aero kits are good, but they don't go fast enough to need them.
No, not really. Certainly, high revving engines, plenty of sideways in these things. Avoid smooth driving.
Yep. And definitely very good to get sideways or 2-3 wide on a lot of corners as well. Just because of how much grip they do get.
And also how much contact you can make, thanks to most of the grip being mechanical. A little bit of ambition barge here doesn't tend to upset the cars too much.
Yep, though you still don't want to overdo it, because once the rear end does come out, if you don't get the right balance of power and keep the weight balanced, the car just keeps sliding.
Yes. And that's how you ruin your tyres.
Yep. So, what's your favorite livery of the ones we have so far?
I'm a fan of the tip-top livery myself. I'm not too familiar with German racing back then, so I don't particularly have a one that resonates with me too much, unless we get some of the DTM92 cars coming through.
Oh, last lap of practice doesn't matter, but it looks like some people did have some contact that race. So, with the current its time being a 1:39.840, and the next best being a 1:43, looks like we have some pretty strong competition potentially coming up. With
Well,
most of the
Georgia has
drivers,
got quite a lead in terms of the practice session, and he has historically done very well in our races,
yeah.
so we can definitely expect a lot from him.
I also expect a 1:42 or thereabouts to be race pace for the medium group, with a 1:39 to a 1:40 being the fast group speed.
I'm interested to see what Tim can do in the Mustang, because this track has got a very long straight, and the Mustang has a lot more power than the other cars.
Yeah, but it also burned through its front tires very quickly because of that extra weight on the front and the fact that the brakes are really bad.
Yes. So we'll see if he can get to the front at the start and last the distance.
Yep.
The car, which
This
I
is a
expect to be very strong on this track.
Yep. This is gonna be a really interesting qualifying lap. Thankfully, unlike the real touring car series, we don't have people giving people starting from the parking lot penalties for drafting each other during qualifying. But yeah, I do kind of worry if people are gonna try to get too close to each other during qualifying, because the problem is once you get too close, you have to start slowing down a little too much and you can't keep your momentum through the corners or else you risk bumping people.
This is a fairly long track, so hopefully we won't get too much of that.
Yep, hopefully. I think we should probably see how Luis Diaz did. He walked away with some really good racing last week. And let's get some overlays.
I already see a lot of sideways. I do expect a lot of that in the BMWs. It is
And
important
also,
that people keep their rear together.
yep.
This car, because you can lose a lot of time.
And also don't forget that cold tires are very much a thing with these cars. And they really don't give you a lot of grip on that first lap, so you probably want to take it a little easy. And going a little sideways on the first lap of qualifying isn't bad, because it does get your rears hot. But if they do get overheated, then all the grip that you would have had just goes away.
One of the main advantages of this car is that no matter what setup you do, there's very little difference you can actually make to the speed. So I do expect it to be a lot of driver skill over setup in this category, without any aero, and honestly not that much difference as you can make in the setup.
It's much more about balance, and speaking of balance, we have our first well, it's definitely a German car, but non-typical German car. We have Lindsay Ross in the Opel.
Yes, the common is Holden. Lindsay Ross from New Zealand, and we have definitely not the strongest car typically in this category.
Yeah, but one of the better looking cars far.
This, of course, was the car, one of the first Opels that was converted to a Holden by putting a V8 in the front.
Also, speaking of V8s, Tim Kennan in the Mustang GT car set the fastest top speed, hitting 240 kilometers an hour before the braking zone on the main stretch.
It's to be expected that they would reach the highest speeds. We haven't got any other Mustang contenders, so it'll be interesting to see what he can do.
Let's see how our first potential lap time is going to look. So far, very good times, but as no doubt, posted time, it should be pretty telling. So let's see what Giorgio puts. And apologies if we do butcher names. We're not the best at European names. My apologies. So 138.597 is the current fastest lap of qualifying. I'm not entirely sure if this pace could be maintained during the race, at least not early on.
That is very similar to the lap he set during practice, remember? So it does look like that's a realistic time for him.
It's realistic. But under racing conditions, with someone on his tailpipe, I'm not entirely sure it could be maintained. But we'll have to see.
Indeed. So he's about 1.5 seconds faster than Genghis Khan in the BMW, or another BMW.
I just received information that I pronounced his name wrong, and it should be pronounced George Jeff, so my apologies, and I will try to maintain this correct pronunciation in the future. Also, for those of you guys who are signed up for our racing league, running the DTM93 Cup in the future, which also runs the Touring Car M3 as well, please do keep in mind that if you PM me on the Sector 3 Studios forum, that I can get all this important information, especially things such as name and pronunciation, on a nice sheet of paper so we don't have issues like this in the future. While Darkey put a respectable time as well in the Mercedes, I do feel the Mercedes is not quite as fast as the BMW because it's much more of a handling car and such. But let's see how he does a lap around the track.
With an actual top speed similar and engine power similar, I think BMW and the Mercedes tend to be very close in terms of lap times almost anywhere.
Oof, looks like someone got off, and oof, I'm worried that that might have got the time DQ'd because he went a little off there due to the wreck that happened in front of him. But I hope Darkey gets a good lap in. Yeah, I think Leo's about just his first time, so let's take a look at one of our Brazilian drivers. Okay, so he's on his second sector. And actually looking to be pretty strong in the second sector, although he had a bad exit. Going too wide is not gonna help his. Oof. Well, that's not exactly where someone wants to be in qualifying, that's for sure.
The gravel trap. Or will be a reset back to pits.
Yeah. Diaz has done a really good job. A 142 on his first lap is pretty good. Considering that we have some really fast guys here, getting within 2 seconds of the fastest is definitely respectable.
Georgiev has set very much a benchmark lap to beat here.
And what's impressive is he's actually shaved, what, I think almost half a second off of his first lap.
I think that is his first lap.
No, his first lap was a 0.8 and 0.3, 138.89.
It'll be interesting to see. Can hold this pace.
Yeah. We only have 6 cars left to post a qualifying lap time, and we have 7.5 minutes to do it.
Georgiev did win a few rounds, I think, our last championship in the GT3 cars. So definitely one of our strongest drivers.
Yep. One thing that's really impressive is how well the server has been holding up. It looks like we got our first Skyline in the running, number 15. Looks like Lindsay Ross reconnected in it.
This car should be theoretically the fastest car of the bunch, being 4-wheel drive and having a lot of horsepower with its turbo.
Yes, it also, however, has the issue of being a lot more loose than any of the other cars. It lacks any kind of aero grip, and it's very well balanced, almost to a point of feeling like a mid-engine rear-wheel drive car, but that also means you gotta be right spot on those weight balances, or you will slide around a little.
It also has a very large ballast that's put in it. 92 after its domination in the late 80s and early 90s when it first arrived in the touring car scene.
Yep. It'll be interesting to see how that performs against the mostly V8 engine crowd. So let's take a look at how it looks. Yeah, you can definitely see a little bit more weight shifting when our cameras work. So currently we have 13 cars which have managed to qualify. And there goes some of our amazing cone physics. One of the major features of race room racing experience, arguably one of the best areas of our physics.
Very wide at the moment. Definitely a handful to get around the track this Nissan. I think he's run wide in the past 3 corners.
Yep. It's really tempting to just floor it, but just like the Audi, if you do, you understeer, and you understeer badly.
Initially, you actually get some snap oversteer, and it can be very difficult to balance that because it quickly transitions into understeer because of the weight.
Yep. And again, it might be a fast car, but it's definitely not a car I would choose. Another thing a lot of people don't realize is that for most people, right-hand drive cars are very awkward to drive unless you live in the UK or
Well,
place
Lindsay
which
Ross lives
normally...
in New Zealand, and we do drive right-hand in New Zealand.
Yeah, well, for New Zealand, yeah, that'd be normal, so I guess that makes sense, but for those of us who drive on the left normally, it's a little awkward to switch, though, again, playing a lot in Euro Truck Simulator can help.
Yeah, well, it helps when you're driving around Europe.
Yeah.
I find it's not too difficult once you get used to driving a lot of the other side, but most cars in Race Room are left-hand drive, so even for people who do drive right-hand drive in real life, can still struggle because in most racing games, the cars tend to be left-hand drive because most cars are German or American.
Yep. Yep, them damn ADAC guys. Oh, that was a really late entry into that corner. He really locked up his fronts on that.
Ended up still getting a fairly good exit though, straight lining and getting the power on early.
Yep. That's the old joke. Late exit will always help out.
2 good times compared to his previous time.
Yep. And we have 14 people posting a qualifying time, with the majority of people, the top 6, being within 4 seconds of the leader. And for the most part, it looks like we're going to have a really good competition for 3rd and for 5th.
Interesting to see the Ford starting off 5th.
Yep, Tim Cannon's a much better driver than he gives himself credit for, especially considering how nose-heavy the Mustang is. But then again, the Mustang in the DTM closing does get that very nice splitter on the front that really gives you that extra grip that you want.
Lindsay, you're also about to come across a line in the descent.
A 148, that puts him in 14th position, and that means that 15 people have qualified. We got just over 2.5 minutes. And we have 2 people left who didn't qualify. Victor Marazzi in the BMW and Mangus Strunbeav, who's in the 14 BMW. A lot of people like that 14 BMW car. If Emil was here, he'd probably be striking a fit about all those people using the same liveries, but...
What can you do? This is an open race, so anyone can join us.
Yep. And we still have a good couple of slots, although for an open race, this is one of the largest grids I've seen on a drop-in event in a while.
Pretty much proving the popularity of these cars.
Yep. So I'm gonna try to see if we can get a full lap on the one car from inside. So to pay attention, the audio levels might be a little off, but we'll see. This is from the fastest lap driver running a BMW.
The chicane is very tight on Portimao with this particular configuration.
You'll notice the generous use of curving because you do want to use a lot of the track space to keep your momentum going. And this
You
is
can
where
use the term curb liberally on this track there, basically just painted strips on the ground. Give you an idea where the edge of the track is, there's little detriment to using them.
Yeah, that's definitely true. But this is also where it creates some interesting challenges. Once you start going side by side, you really don't have the ability to use more than half the track. Otherwise, you're gonna wreck someone. And you don't want to be known as a wrecker, that's for sure.
Especially not now we have a live stream.
So,
looks like this lap's pace is very similar to his previous laps, so we definitely see a dominance.
He did get a little bit of his right wheel off on that exit though, so that cost him a little bit of time.
Last corner, this is a tighter version of the corner, but still hold a lot of speed through here.
Let's see who is going to get their last lap on practice, or qualifying. Okay, so last lap we got 12, 15, 17, 4, 4 went off, and it looks like George is going to get one last lap if he chooses to take it, not that he needs it. 6 also has a lap, I think, not entirely sure. And 14's going to be finishing his last lap. Oh, looks like it reset. Okay, so this is the race lineup. We're going to get through it relatively quickly. We have Georgie, Con, Doug, Mother, Diaz, Tim Cannon, and Luis. Sorry, here you go. I can't read that. We got so many. Looks like they're off though. Yep. Hedges is taking a really nice.
Looks like we've had a spin on the first chicane with Steen.
Yeah. The car had Polidaki had a really bad start, so he's about 4 seconds behind in 7s or in 17. So I hope he catches up, but that's not a good start he wanted.
Mostly the first 5 are still in the same order.
Yep. There was a huge pack going through the first few turns though. It was really crazy, and yeah, definitely a lot of racing action going on. Okay, so I'm gonna switch over to so Tim Cannon's doing a great job holding his own in the Mustang with how hard of a maneuver. It's so much more of a power car than the rest of them, so he's definitely doing a good job with all these BMWs. It's like comparing a light hare versus a Roadrunner.
Coming onto the straight now, we'll see if he can get alongside. All that extra power.
Most of the gaps, for the most part, are under a second. Let's take a look at Michael Debris, who's almost a third of a second behind Luis Brosa. Looks like he didn't get quite the draft he wanted to. Looks like Jason Moores is really close to Luis Diaz. And these are two really come on. Okay. Sorry about that, just some tech difficulties. Definitely some really close racing going on with some of these guys. There's hardly even half a car length between them in those corners.
Cannon, Sturnaby, and Thomas are all very close here. Oh!
Oof.
And Sturnaby's just run too wide off corner.
Yeah, that now he's lost it. Hopefully he can recover.
Drifted into the side of Thomas there.
Let's take a look at the 11th and 10th car battle for position. And being Steen, and they're definitely really going at it. See how they do. Keep in mind these back sections really fast with a lot of high-speed cornering. Graze, lose grip.
Using all the runoff. Looks like we don't have slowdown penalties on at the moment.
I think he did have a slowdown. Yeah, he had.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, Thomas just got. Ooh.
Something's been happening there.
Yeah.
Again, the first chicane proving itself very difficult for a lot of drivers.
Let's see how Tim Cannon recovers from that. With almost 4 minutes down, we've had a lot of position changes. Cannon's dropped a position, Khan's dropped quite a few positions. We thought Khan was going to do a lot better than he did early on, and he's down from 2nd to 5th now. Luis Diaz is doing really good for himself. Looks like Georgia has gone much faster than we expected in race conditions, and he's got almost 8 seconds lead now. With Jason Monda representing Canada and holding strong 2nd, getting just enough of a gap to almost be called a breakaway, but not quite being able to catch up to Georgia. And Luis Diaz is doing fantastic, as always. But even he is still 10 seconds down off Georgia, so... looks like this is going to be the race for 3rd for most people.
Very much so. With 2 seconds separating 3rd to 5th.
Let's take a look at Oldberg, who's really right up there. Yeah.
Comes alongside into the hardest braking point on this track. Downhill into a very tight chicane. Isn't quite able to make it past.
He nearly lost it there. Really pushing that car quite hard, taking the inside as much. Ooh! Looked like they were contact for a second, but very minor at that. They're definitely good racers though. And you can see, you got, I think that's Khan right there trying to get as much aero as possible to keep himself in that fight. Yeah. This is why people
slide into the hairpin.
That was quite the overtake maneuver, and oof. Yeah, let's see if we can hold it.
An over-under. Oh, contact.
Ooh.
They all get through alive, believe it or not.
Yeah. This track and these cars are really good combination. No. Let's take a look at Diaz, because he's certainly not going to give this competition up. Not even half a second behind, and definitely in aero range, definitely able to keep pace. And remember, this is 3X tire wear, so those tires are wearing out much faster than normal. And
the more they battle, the more sudden rising contact they make, the faster they're going to wear out their tires and allow the Mustang to catch up behind them.
Yep.
Although Sternum is right on the back of Cannon, and it's not making it easier for him either.
And let's see if there's any other battles going on at this given moment. Looks like our Nissan's actually really close to Lindgren. Lindgren. My apologies. Again, BMW versus BMW, very much identical cars. I think Steen is running the yeah, Steen's in the BMW.
Dean is in the Touring Classics BMW, and Lezo is in the DTM92 BMW.
Yep. In theory, the touring car version should be slightly slower, but the differences are so minor. And really, they're right all over each other, just like two lovers at a beach park.
Very defensive line there by Lezo.
Oof, that's a
Women
little
got
too
a
much on the
slowdown
inside.
penalty, I believe.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. But very good driving from... I think he just got a little too much on the trail braking and hooked it inside. Let's go back up and get in with Olog. Or Magnus. Him and Kenan are really going for it. It looks like Kenan got time while we're looking a little further back. And now Kenan has to defend himself. He has the advantage. He has the straights. You can see him just getting all that time even when he's giving the draft, just because how much more powerful the Mustangs are. I mean, that's
He pulls
a big
out about
block
2
of
car
V8.
lengths in that period, but the all gets closed back up with the braking points because the Mustang's brakes are...
Oh, Kenan really messed up there. Hope he's alright.
loses the back end, but keeps going.
Yeah, he
Drops
only
2
lost
positions.
a position. Well, 2 positions isn't that bad. Now they're only 5 seconds behind Oberg, so this means that there's 2 people veering for a third, and that's Kahn and Oberg. So
Looks like the third and fourth are actually catching second.
oh, looks like Kahn made a mistake and lost a position to Oldberg very quickly, just as I was switching to them. I think it probably was getting too far on the exit. Probably got a slowdown penalty for going off.
Now it's up to Obo to catch Mons, as he is doing.
Yeah, it was only 2 seconds gap. That's very doable, especially with 15 minutes on the clock. The pace they're going, I think this is going to be a 12 more laps. Maybe a bit less than that.
As you can see, almost drifting the car into that corner there.
And yeah, you can just see how close the competition is. About half a second between them. Let's take a look and see how our Skyline driver's doing. Again, this is in theory the strongest car, but it's down in 13th with a good 5 seconds between him and 12th. Let's see how the tire wear looks at this point in the race after 10 minutes. Keep in mind this is equivalent of 30 minutes of real-world driving, so... Yeah, definitely a little loose. You can see it. Even in qualifying, it wasn't the grippiest, but... Yeah, definitely a little bit more of a handful, and definitely...
The extra weight very much pulling on the tyres of the Skyline.
The straightaway, though, gaining a lot of time, though I have a feeling something happened was probably just a straightaway, but we'll see. Yeah, all the time he gained back in the straightaway was lost in that chicane. Let's go back up and pick up Luis. Diaz has been doing a really good job. He is now on the trail of Kenan.
Easily within passing distance at this point. All it takes is a mistake from Kenan.
And you can just see how much slower Kenan is on corner entry with that Mustang, just because of how bad the brakes are. And you really gotta be careful in getting on the throttle when you're just that close, because it's really easy to upset the rear end and you don't want to bump him. That's the last thing you want to do. And of course...
Coming onto the back straight now, we'll see if the Mustang can pull away.
Ooh, it's really close. The draft's keeping them within a second. That's definitely a big deal.
Now onto the hardest braking zone once again, and definitely pulled back the gap a bit.
It's more the second exit that really makes up all that time, though.
Looks like Cannon got a bit squirrely on the exit of the hard corner.
Both of them are going very squirrely. I mean, it's almost Tokyo Drift levels of squirrely.
He pulls to the inside, has a look. Don't know if he's close enough though.
Not quite close enough. Definitely not close enough. But definitely, this is the move you'd want to make. The hard part is that the Mustang just has so much power that you can't really get the exit passes that you'd want. You want to pass under braking. Because
The dive bomb is definitely necessary in this car. Or a mistake. Makes it very difficult to overtake a car. So much more power than you.
It's definitely one of the things that you learn, especially if you play the older car games, like GT Legends is a good example. That game made you do so many races where you had to drive a dinky little Abers 1000 with its rear-engine rear-wheel drive configuration and open-ended engine deck cooling, versus a bunch of Ford Mustangs and that crazy TVR car that is impossible to drive. This is very much that kind of situation here.
Perhaps not to the same extreme though.
Yeah, and certainly with
Right
a lot
in the
more
draft this time. Possible he could do it in the next braking zone.
Yeah.
Mustang hasn't pulled a very large gap.
Yep. And that's why having a large gaudy wing isn't always the best design choice for your car. Definitely keeping it very close.
On the outside of this corner, probably won't be able to get past there. For a better exit.
Yeah, lost in the corner because he had to let off the gas before he smacked the rear end.
Cannon once again defensive into the hairpin.
Cannon's definitely showing you how you defend with a power heavy car. Definitely putting on a clinic here today. Hans got back up into second position and took it from Oberg. So that's definitely impressive. Let's quickly switch over to the battle with Oberg and Mons. Very close fighting here. Yeah, the three of them are just right tight packed together with about half a second between them. And,
looks like they are all in the DTM92 BMW.
Yep. It may not look like it, but that front splitter is such a lifesaver for these cars. It gives you so much more grip on the front. You get a lot more turn-in response, even under braking, which is really nice. And the car doesn't lock up that much either, so it's more about getting the power on the road that's the problem.
With a very high revving engine, it's important to keep the revs up, but it also makes it very easy to brake the rear.
Mm-hmm. Another thing that's really great about these cars is the fact that they are very well suited for endurance races, because they don't have massive fuel consumption. I think they're only, 3.8 liter V8s in this era? I know the modern DTMs moved up to the 4.6s though.
Also much lighter than the other cars. The lightest car in the field, I believe.
Definitely. And they also have pretty damn good headlights too, so when we do eventually get night racing, I expect these to be very popular in it. Speaking of night racing and endurance racing, which cars do you think would make the most interesting endurance racing hunt?
Well, historically, in real life, of the cars in this field, the Skyline was the most famous for endurance racing, winning, I think, the Bathurst 3 years in a row, relatively many successes around the world. The BMW was always a favourite, but the the Nissan took a lot of ballast weights because of its success in endurance racing.
Yep. So we had our upset this year where the McLaren, I think, won, didn't it?
Oh, the McLaren, yes. Shane Vink is this year at the Bathurst. The McLaren, the new McLaren, I believe it's I forget what it's not. It's not the 12C anymore. 650S. New McLaren won with Shane Van Gisbergen's new lap of the gods almost, with being much faster in qualifying and over the race, showing his superior ability.
Breaking news, we apparently have had a DNF due to, I believe, engine damage. The Skyline had to retire. Probably engine or transmission damage, so he's out. We're
Very
down to
important that you shift smooth in these cars. They do not have
downshift prevention.
no, they do not. So downshift too early, you will break the gearbox or grind the gears.
Ooh, looks like someone suffered from a very late turn-in. I hope they're alright. Sometimes this game's engine is a little funny on giving you slowdown penalties. You go on the outside, you'll get them. Not always, but I do remember this happened once or twice on the Hungaroring race we did that was only BMWs from the Historic and Touring Classic and DTM series a while back. That was a
It
really
can
good
be
race.
a bit harsh, yes.
Hungaroring is, I think, the track I'm most excited for in the upcoming DTM versus TCM3 Cup.
It's definitely the most difficult track on the calendar, I believe, apart from perhaps Bathurst. Got some very large curbs.
Yep, built in '78 under Soviet rule, it was intended for the Formula One racing, and it very much shows as a classic historic style Formula One track. It's got enough sections where you can really get on the speed, but it really requires you to keep momentum through the corners, and it's very flowing. It also has a lot of really nice hairpins towards the end, which allow for very good passing opportunities, even in aero-driven cars.
It's very much a standout in the F1 calendar with not a lot of runoff and very large curbs all over the place, which is much unlike most F1 tracks in the modern era.
Yeah, it's unfortunate it no longer sees use in the current Formula One Grand Prix, because I honestly think it would definitely run very well with the modern cars. But again, I'm not a high-paid FIA official, so I can't save the world from F1.
Well, I understand the safety concerns with the large curbs. Even Suzuka is a track which seems to be borderline for the F1 season.
Yeah. I don't think curbs are as big of a safety concern as the crash barriers, though. But then again, for example, they have been a problem in a lot of events. A good example being the 1992 Mid-Ohio race that IndyCar ran, where I forgot who it was. I think it was not Marco, but Marco's brother, who hit the curb, spun and hit the outside barricade, losing his rear tire and having to retire because of that very early on.
Because Formula One cars have so much downforce, curbs can, if they upset the car too much, cause the cars to gain lift, and that's often why are not used in modern F1 races.
And definitely a big issue. Even in GT cars nowadays, sometimes you get the McLarens, you run very stiff suspension on the McLarens, you bump one of the sides, and it spins out of control. And let's see if there's any close racing, and it looks like our good friend Olberg is putting on a pretty close battle against Khan. Khan's has been all over the place. There's been a huge amount of passing. Also, just to mention, Ken's dropped down to 7, so it looks like Diaz got past him eventually, and that pushed him down. Looks like the battle for second's much tighter now, but definitely the field's otherwise spread out a lot more. With 4 minutes to go, it looks like people are really suffering from tire wear, as seen there, with Olberg really keeping it just barely under control. With how... Go ahead.
Very close here. You can definitely see that Olberg is struggling with the tyres a lot more than Khan is, though, as he gets very loose. But keeps it on the track.
Yep, he definitely... No, he doesn't keep it on the track. He shows us that he could drift it and play fine. Oh dear. I hope he didn't get a slowdown from that. Especially
it's
cutting
the
like
white
that.
line there. If your tyre passes the whole way over the white line, you get a slowdown. So it's very much a balancing game on that corner.
Yep, definitely. Really nice counterpart skins, though. Definitely very nice counterparts for this race.
Almost takes a much wider entry into the corner to try and get a better exit.
Definitely needs it. With 23 minutes left, right now, most of these guys need to focus on finishing with the positions they have. Looks like Diaz is about to be under attack, so let's take a look at that. Pretty close, right here. Very close gap, and both of those cars look to be hurting a lot. Ooh, yeah, definitely hurting a lot.
Right on the edge there, you can see is Sturnaby. Very close to a slowdown. That corner's one place where the slowdowns are very hard if you go too wide.
Definitely.
Once again, oh, I think it must have got a slowdown there.
Yeah, definitely got a slowdown there. How unfortunate. Well, just in time to see a pass attempt. Oof, just went too wide and couldn't keep it. Going right back to the re-attack though.
Very close to hitting his back in there. Perhaps a bit of a bumper run may be necessary to get past.
Perhaps, but Khan's now on the attack, and he hasn't been in this position for a while. Now, he probably has the tire advantage, but more importantly, he has to take advantage of the aero advantage to keep his timing down. But even then, the aero advantage is very minimal. You can see such a small gap change. In fact, he's not even really gaining that much once you hit the braking zone. Oof, he really gained about 2 times a second on that braking zone, lost it there. Just, oof.
Seems to be much deeper on the brakes, whereas Thomas has got more exit speed. We'll see if dive bomb comes into play.
With 50 seconds left, I think they're gonna get one more lap, but if they don't, then he's gonna have to make his move like right away. Let's see if there's anything else. Looks like most of the other people are gonna maintain their position unless they spin out, so this is the only battle left of this race. And what a race it's been so far.
That's very much showing why they are a favourite race room.
Yep. And just to think, this track itself is given for free for anyone who wants to download and play Race Room this minute. It's very much one of the nicer tracks out there. A little hard, but definitely a lot of fun. And the cars you have to race.
This is the last lap.
Yep, last lap.
I'm not sure if George have passed the line or not.
Yep, I'll check. Ooh, looks like Kenan lost another position. Oh, no, he's battling with Steen. Let's take a look at that. And Georgiev is, yeah, we have another lap for them, I think, yeah. So Kenan's on the attack against Steen, trying to regain his 7th position. He has this lap to do it.
Remember, Kenan is probably understeering a lot at the moment due to the extra weight of the engine and his tyre wear.
Yeah. But he does have the power advantage. If he can just get on that power, this is the opportunity he'll have, especially with the draft.
Very good exit there.
This is going to be a really close finish. Oh!
He pulls to the outside. That's an odd move.
Yeah, that's a really good move, and almost made it stick. Almost. It's just the brakes on that being so terrible. But definitely, he just now put Steen on defense mode because Steen can't make a good gap before the straightaway. It's straight up a drag race at that point.
Thomas only has one lap. Oh, he runs very wide.
Oh dear, I think Cannon's lost it. Oof!
Ooh.
And unfortunately, Lorenzo...
Was it Lazo who ran it?
Yeah.
Lost it there.
Yeah. Well, at least they made it to the finish line. Well, almost. So our finishing order is Georgia, or Jardaf, Khan, Oberg, Monson, Dea, then Dean and Cannon will finish. Let's see. Yep. 30 seconds left to get to the finish line. And I think pretty much from 10th on, or 10th upwards, they should all finish. So let's watch the 10th car finish off the race. In the Tic Tac car that you like so much. And from the front view, you can just see how hilly this track is. I mean, it's massive hills, massive camber changes,
Smooth, but lots of undulation changes.
Yep.
And here's our results.
Yep.
In
So,
first is Georgiev, and second is Khan, and third is Thomas Elberg. Fourth is Mons, fifth is Diaz, sixth finished Sturnaby, seventh is Steen, eighth is Kennan, ninth is Lazo, and 10th is Sean Kenny.
Yep. For such a massive grid, we have only had 3 people not finish the race from DQ or disconnecting, and 1 person who did not finish who was on the track.
Very impressive, actually. Almost no servo issues from what I could see. All the cars were visible at all times.
Yep. And that is such a great race. So, Hunt, do you want to do the second race?
There too, is there?
We can, it's up to you. We can do another race if you want, or we don't have to.
Oh, your choice, I don't mind.
I'll stick around if other drivers do.
As long as my computer doesn't overheat.
Yep. Let's take a look and see. Looks like 7 people have already continued onwards. Hopefully the rest join. We are, of course, changing to Spielberg, the Red Bull Ring, which, to be honest, is an alright track, although the older variation of it was much better.
This version is a very odd combination for these cars because it's very much a straight line track, lots of straights and hairpins, whereas the BMWs prefer a more flowy track with lots of tight corners.
Yep. You know what? We're gonna quickly, what we're gonna do is while the Amazon, while people queue in for this race and while practice goes on, we're gonna quickly restart our streaming PC so that we can air out the bugs, and we'll be right back in a few short minutes. Okay, we are back after doing some problem solving. This should be a very interesting race. With so many people running the BMWs, I'm pretty sure a lot of them are running it to practice for a championship that's coming up ahead.
It's quite likely at this point. I'm not sure when is the championship starting.
Looks like Oldberg is bringing out the good old-fashioned Volvo. A very nice classic turbocharged 220, I think it is, the 220X. Very fun car, but pretty much perfect for drifting.
Very famous rally car, this one, is where most of its use was in history. It still is today, even, a popular rally car.
Yep. Because even when you mess up, you're totally safe. It's a Volvo, right? It can't possibly kill you. It's also such a classy car, though to be 100% honest, in Race 07, I enjoyed much more so the, not that one, I enjoyed driving the, I think it's the, 1800p, the really old hearse-like looking one. And mostly because that one you could really get the back end out a lot and have a lot of fun with that.
In racing, I find the gearbox on the Volvo quite finicky and difficult to change shift. I often miss gears.
Yeah, but when you do get it right, it's a lot of fun. That turbo on it really is awesome. Oof, looks like our fastest cars slid off a little bit. Yeah, nah, it'll be alright. So far, 9 people have joined in. So what are the other cars you drive in Race Room? Hunt?
Well, I've mostly been driving the cars with the updated physics. My favourite being the M1 Pro car, which does drive a lot like these, but it has the new force feedback from the new tyre model, which I enjoy.
Yeah, that car is really good, but the brakes on that drive me insane. It feels like it doesn't want to slow down.
No, it's got very weak brakes. You need to turn them up to 100%, and even then they can lock up. I think it has a lot of weight behind it. It's also a mid-engine car, I believe, so
Yeah,
it's a bit
wait,
of a different feel to it.
definitely. On the flip side, it also has arguably the best sounding engine in the game.
Very much like the Group 5 cars.
As the Group 5 cars, which one do you enjoy the most?
The only one I have is the BMW. Because it came with the hill climb pack, which is one of the best ways to get a lot of the classic cars. You get the touring car, you get Group 5 cars, as well as a few other popular drove cars. So if you like BMW and you want to get into race room for cheap, the hill climb pack has a lot of what you'll want, and also has a lot of similar cars which will give you discounts on other cars.
It also has the oof, Sheen Kelly really went off there. The good thing it's a video game, otherwise you could have gotten seriously hurt. Jason Mon's putting in some really good very good pace.
The BMW takes pole in practice so far.
Yep, but
Georgia
Cannon's
was let
put
to settle that.
yeah, Cannon's put a pretty good lap time in as well. It's expected he'll be able to put a really good lap time in because he's in arguably one of the fastest cars in this group, but even so, it's much harder to get around some of these cars due to the terrain than people realize.
2 Volvos now and 2 Mustangs, so definitely the more high power horsepower cars are showing up for this race.
Yeah,
The
and
much
Khan
long
came
straight.
back in the second one too, though, so that's gonna be really interesting. another track that's come up for the third round in particular of the Grand Prix that we're going to be doing up next is Zolder. And Zolder is a pretty interesting track as well. I think it's definitely one of the more underrated. And speaking of underrated, Tim Cannon just stole the lead just before practice time's over.
You see this Mustang's got the pace this time. Big to see a lot more cars at the front, a much more mixed field.
Definitely a lot more of a mixed field. But as we were saying, we're going to be going to, for the third round, Zolder, which I think is going to be really interesting, especially with these old cars. While it's a relatively flat track, with almost all the hills being on the backstretch, back end section, past the the first chicane, especially.
Yes.
Very much a interesting and challenging track, to say the least.
Very hard chicanes and large curves. For these cars, it'll be a lot of fun.
Definitely. You have so much track width, especially on the first 4 corners of that track. And even though the chicanes are very narrow normally, the braking is so good on these cars that you can much more easily battle people right up into the late braking point. So
it is
that's
also
definitely good.
Possible to go side by side through some of the chicane, even though it looks very narrow from the front. With a large curve on both the left and the right, you can go side by side. Just you might get a bit of air.
It's a matter of how much do you trust the guy you're racing with. Do you trust him not to mess up? Because if you do, you can go too wide there, no problem. Heck, you could probably go 2x2 there very tightly and have no problem as well.
It is a very difficult track though. Zolder.
Yep. Yet it's really fun when you're driving rear-wheel drive cars that are not super fast and are not overly aero dependent, because you then just get so much more ability to let it drift a little bit. And there you can see just how easy it is to get a little understeer, even in a rear-wheel drive car like the Volvo. Just get so much weight pulled off the front. Especially due to the fact that the entire front stretch, when you turn onto it, is uphill.
Once again, Red Bull does tend to have a lot of slowdown penalties with the runoffs that's provided.
Yep.
You can avoid them a lot if you do slow down once you run off the track before rejoining, but it's often a very marginal thing and you won't notice it.
Definitely.
Especially with the sausage curves on the inside of the corner, which can push the car off to the outside if you hit them too hard.
Yep. An interesting thing to note, by the way, is that Khan has the fastest speed on this track so far at 228 kilometers per hour, and he is of course running in the Volvo, as you can currently see.
The Volvo is faster than the Mustang in a straight line, is it? I'm actually surprised by that.
Yep.
You have a larger engine versus a turbo engine there.
Definitely. But that's what makes this a very fun car to drive. That turbo power, it's a lot of fun when you get right, but when you get wrong, you spin out and there's nothing you can do about it.
14 cars showed up so far, perhaps more. Once again, a very full lineup here already.
Yep. Another interesting track that we're going to, and the first track we're going to be going to, is in the upcoming BMW M3 Cup, the Mid-Ohio short course. Now, I kind of understand why we're doing the short version, because it cuts out the longer straights, but it also cuts out the keyhole, which I think is arguably one of the better corners in Mid-Ohio.
Again, keyhole is quite fun, but I do understand why it doesn't cut a lot out, but why you'd want a shorter track.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing about that, though, is that when you do that, you then have a very awkward rolling start in the real world, because, as you know, the end of Sector 1 on the normal and chicane variants is where they have the marshalling station, and due to how the first corner lines up, they actually on rolling starts use Sector 1's marshalling boost to do the starting of the rolling starts, not the start-finish line. mainly because of the carousel section in particular, just because of all the cars that are stuck in that during the rolling start. So it'll be interesting to see how we handle the rolling start with the shorter version.
Is it going to be a single file rolling start or a double file rolling start? If it's a single file rolling start, I don't think it will matter too much.
Yeah, but we'll leave it to our race officials to make the decision on how best to handle the rolling start on that track. However, the meat of the course starts in the entire second sector, which is full of a series of turns that are uphill, downhill, left and right, snaking throughout a series of hills with some very nasty curving, and with such situations that you really gotta get on your braking just right, because if you do not get it right, your car will spin or go off. It's very challenging, even with these more forgiving cars.
It is perfect for the BMWs actually, because the BMWs do like the big curves, and that makes it a lot of fun. Because there are very big curves in Mid-Ohio, especially around the braking points, around corners.
Yep. The interesting thing about Mid-Ohio, though, is it's so well designed that it makes it easy for you to make mistakes on the track. And if you do go off, you're not going to get caught into traffic. So it means you can definitely race a lot harder without worrying about getting hit by someone because you spun out. You're just going to slide off the track.
Yes, it is. It's not any runoff though, so they definitely rely on the design, the track, catch people who do make mistakes, which there will be plenty.
Yep. There's, even at the highest level of racing, even at events like IndyCar when they do run at Mid-Ohio, there's plenty of mistakes. But then again, that's half the fun of watching them.
Yes.
Let's do a lap around with Tim Kennan to see how he does this track. Just after a second corner. Ooh. Surprised he didn't get a slowdown penalty from that.
You can take a lot of runoff, but you can't get onto the red on this track, and that's your key. If you roll two wheels onto the red, it'll ping you with a slowdown. You can use as much green as you want.
Definitely. The interesting thing about this track, though, is that even though this is definitely suffering from some of the modern F1 circuit problems, it's still got a lot of hills and it still puts the car off balance. And that's a great thing to have on a track like this, especially for cars like this.
Some surprisingly tricky corners around for such a straight track. A lot of the corners are off camber and tend to throw the car sideways under brakes, making it very difficult to get a good exit.
Yep. One of the greater parts of this track, though, is the fact that you do get that really nice climb uphill, and that means that you can really, especially for going off the second corner, get on the power much earlier than you expect, because you have so much weight on the back tires that you get a lot more grip. You just cannot get on it just slightly too early, though, because then you understeer and go off. That's going to be a common trend, though. And it looks like for this race, we're having a very strong Canadian dominance. First and second are controlled by now Khan just took first and Cannon's in second. Very close between them, though. It's 0.352 versus 0.378. So that's what,
very close.
Yeah, that's a few hundredths of a second.
Going to be quite the race. It's we have a Audi joining us this time, which we haven't seen yet.
Yep.
Lindsay Ross from New Zealand.
Yep, he got a fresh car that's repaired and ready to go. I hope he can make it through this race, all right?
Without blowing his gearbox.
Yep. And we have another person. I can't tell. That's probably a BMW, but I can't tell because the color blends in so much. But we have a 15th driver, so again, a very big grid here today.
This is Aileen Senna driving the Jim Richards liveried BMW from the Touring Classics class. This is my favourite livery.
Yep.
Tim Richards being probably the most famous driver out of New Zealand.
Yep, New Zealand pride here, folks. If you don't know, Hunt is a very proud New Zealander.
Kiwi.
I have to say, though, all of my it looks like Tim Cannon stole the top speed by 1 km/h. It's now 229 km/h.
Again, they must just be going later into the braking zone there, because braking zone into turn 3 is very hard, and late braking will mean you'll get a higher top speed, but will also make it a lot more difficult to get a good exit out of that turn 3.
Yep.
It's where I expect most of the action to occur on this track, being the most difficult corner.
I also expect that a lot of action going through there to lead into some continuous, some very tight racing action through the internal carousel section, if you'd call it that. Or would you? It's kind of like the stadium section on Hockenheimring almost.
Yes, well, almost. It's a bit longer than that, but
yeah,
very two very long side-by-side corners you can go through with a fair amount of runoff.
Yep. And definitely, considering these cars and how they drive, I definitely would expect that. Speaking of Hockenheim, I'm surprised we're not going to Hockenheim for the series, but where we are going to that's interesting is the Nordreising track. I can't even tell if that track's supposed to be an oval or not, but it is very interesting for a street course.
I'm not sure about that one.
Yeah. It's, for those who don't know, it's got 3 straights, 3 corners, I think. Or, no, 3 straights, yeah, 3 straights, 3 corners, I think. And it's very much a very tight, late-braking course, if you will.
Sounds like it'll be good for the BMWs.
Well, it's definitely going to be interesting because 2 of the corners are hairpins and the majority of the track is straight. So it's very much a draft battle.
Be interesting on the BMWs don't have a lot of draft themselves, with almost no aero whatsoever apart from the front splitter.
Yep. It's very much going to be a game of chicken, though, that's for sure. And it looks like we have the top speed positions controlled by a Canadian, so Team Canada is doing very strong for themselves today.
3 different cars, all from Canada. Be an interesting race. Look at the times, very close, all in the 35s.
Yep. Very close timing indeed. Very, very close timing. And it's really interesting to see because it looks like, yeah, it looks like we got a new fastest top speed. Golev set the fastest speed in. Let's see what car he's in. Yeah, Jordoff in the Nissan Skyline set the fastest speed, 235 km/h. So, yeah, that's seriously one of the fastest cars out here.
That is to be expected with the huge turbo on that car.
Yep. Let's see if we can catch a little bit of him running around the track. He still hasn't posted a lap time, though.
This was another very famous Australian livery in the Nissan Skyline. Yep. The livery that won Bathurst twice, I believe.
Yep. Unfortunately, he's not on a qualifying lap, but he'll have enough time to get 1 qualifying lap in if he can hold it together. Speaking of, we're almost out of qualifying time with 1 minute and 22 seconds.
Ooh, doesn't look like he will get a qualifying lap, and he may just sneak one in. If he does not, it's going to be very interesting to see him fight his way through the field.
I definitely think he could if he can tame the car, but if definitely it should be easy enough to make overtakes.
With all the extra power, could be a lot of overtaking actually. I'm surprised we don't have more Skylines. They're already my favourite cars for this track with all the extra power they have.
Yep. Definitely, I'd say that they are one of the most powerful cars, but also one of the more interesting ones. And there goes his qualifying lap. That's unfortunate, but what can you do?
It's unfortunate, but hopefully we'll get to see some good action for us.
Yep. This really is going to have some close action, though. First goes down to fourth under a second. And then...
we do the... Moving up the top 10 now.
You can go into the
First
top
is
10.
Khan, second is Cannon, and third is Thomas, who's taken third from Mons. So Mons is fourth. An Italian name I'm not even going to try is fifth. Burnaby is sixth. George Kenny is seventh. Alongside him, Stevens is in eighth. Lazo is in ninth, and rounding up to the 10 is Paul Dark. Richard.
Starting the race, we're going to start from Tim Cannon. Ooh, that's not the start people want to see. Sheesh. That...
Too much power off the start line, I believe.
Yeah. Looks like he's alright,
And that's Lorenzo.
Lorenzo should be able to make up some time throughout this race, but... that was not the start he wanted to see. Looked like the guy that's sort of left of him just got on the power and had a little too much right wheel, slid into him and smack.
Very good start by Khan, pulling a car width from Cannon.
Yep. And Cannon's really keeping up close there, though. They're getting a lot of draft on this track, so it's going to be kept tight.
Was there a bit of contact there almost? Difficult to tell, but very close.
It's so minor that it really doesn't matter at this point. It's just them just drafting each other so hard.
As Khan gets past, Cannon goes to the outside, but doesn't get through.
Yep. And then Oldberg is right up their tailpipe, leaving no space for the weary. Mon is a little further back, but I think he's trying to defend it from whoever's right behind him. That's the other Swedish guy.
Well, all this battling is actually bringing them into it, I believe.
Yeah, it's definitely... Ooh, too wide. That was such a good attack from Oldberg, but he couldn't make it stick coming on that side. Ooh!
Very wide, but no slowdowns there. Looks like he can go very wide through that corner.
Yep, they're all using that green so much. This is... Yep, I'm really glad there's no Formula 1 administrators watching this, because they get really pissed off from all the track limit abuse.
Really? Car's now broken away and Maddox wants to second gap.
Just at this point, it's almost enough to escape from drafting range, but there's still a hair of draft at this point.
Because there is very little draft in this car, so not a huge gap is needed to break the draft, but all it takes is the one mistake and then we're back into it.
Yep.
As Thomas goes down the inside into the most difficult corner on the track.
Yep, he just Oof. That's not what Can wanted to do. He outbraked himself. That's the... Oof, looks like the Opel just... I think that was a Mercedes that
was a Mercedes, yes.
Yeah.
That was the Italian driver, Postels? Oh, I can't say that. I apologise if I mispronounce your name.
He did such a good drive, but as typical, sometimes you get a little bit too aggressive, you push yourself past your limit and can't recover.
Was Roberto possible?
The main thing I'm concerned about with Khan is he is pushing that car really hard, and with 3x time acceleration on this track, 3x tire acceleration, that's gonna burn those tires alive by the end of it.
All the front runners have got very high tire wear cars, so it'll be interesting to see if they can hold up from the BMWs who should have much lower tire wear.
I'm also wondering what Oldberg's brake bias is, because it looks like he's slightly locking his rears a little much.
It is something you might want to do in these cars, because locking up the fronts on this track, especially on some of the more difficult corners such as turn 3, will put you in the gravel traps pretty quickly.
Yep. But the risk then is oversteer is a big issue with these cars, especially as tire wear gets worse. It's a difficult balance to get right.
These cars, you can adjust the brake balance throughout the race.
Yep. These guys...
They may be playing around with it a bit to see what works best.
Definitely. It's unfortunate that Diaz isn't in here. He did a really good race last race, and it's unfortunate, but I guess time commitments caught him out.
Seems to be a large gap forming now for between 4th and 5th, as well as 5th and 6th. So
looks like we have
front runners.
George F. pushing really hard in the skyline. He's definitely closing the gap, but lost a bit of time in the last corner before we switch. You can definitely see the power difference between it and the BMWs, though. But again, this is one of the faster cars. He's gained 2 positions since the start of the race, one of which was due to the incident. Unfortunately, it looks like the guy who got hit had to retire, probably due to gearbox damage.
As you can see on the straight, pulling right up behind the Mercedes of Puzzleban's.
Yep. Puzzleban's done a decent job, not too far behind. He's definitely been keeping pace in the time sections after his spin earlier on. So it's not like he's doing terrible. He's just needs to make up a lot of time, and that's going to be very hard with the level of competition we have here today. Looks like Kennan's competing against Olbrich ahead, so let's switch back up there. And it's a 3-way battle with Gingerby really putting up a lot of pressure on Kennan, and Kennan putting a lot of pressure on Oldberg. So it's really a battle of the nations.
2 Mustangs versus the BMW, which is surprisingly keeping pace.
It's not like the BMW is that slow compared to them, it's just the power difference, and it's a matter of can you make up the... You can see it there, the BMW just makes up so much time in that corner, just because it can keep itself on the power much longer.
They also have much better brakes, so what time is made up in the straights can be offset by the braking performance of the BMW as well.
Yep.
As he
Going
pulls
too
alongside
wide in a straight, however, is not the kind of position you'd want to go. You'd rather, if I was in the driver's seat and had this ability, I would pretty much just nose up his rear end until we got to the braking zone. That way you can squeeze as much air out of it. But again, that's just me.
It's possible he needed to take a evasive action on the corner exit when he had so much more speed to the corner.
Yeah,
that he has to pull alongside onto the straights.
Yep.
As you can see once again.
And unfortunately for Kennan, he's losing Oldberg because he has to defend himself now. Another idea Kennan could do is he could just simply let an easy pass happen, let the BMW by, then get the draft and a little extra power on the straightaway, and get the position right back. That's another trick that you could use in this situation.
But of course he doesn't want to get stuck behind the BMW on the straightaways either.
I don't think you'll get stuck behind it, but again, if you don't get a good corner exit, that could happen, so... Oof.
Right on the edge again of the grass. The AstroTurf, I think it is.
That AstroTurf is used and abused on this track with every DTM style event ever, so nothing changes. Surprisingly, he gained a bit on Oldberg, almost a tenth of a second, and probably will gain a bit more if the BMW backs off a little bit.
He can keep the pace he's holding at the moment. He will be able to catch back up to Oldberg.
Almost kept it fast, but on that exit it was kind of problematic.
A bit too much power and got the rear end round.
Yep. And taking a look at our YouTube chat for just a moment, we have Maed, who just said hello, gents. So we're gonna say hello back to you. If you want to say anything or comment on the race, we'll occasionally read and see what you guys have to say. So feel free to say stuff. That is really tight going through that carousel section. As I said before, that's definitely reminiscent of Hockenheimring.
I'm having some technical issues at the moment. You have to give me a moment.
Okay. Speaking of connection issue, we have had another person disconnect from the race. I'm not sure who or what, but, well, unfortunate. And also, Linda Ross is out of the race. Unsure of what technical difficulties, probably engine failure or something like that. Switching over to Esr Drop-in, and you can see just how he's really all over Cannon's rear end.
Again, holding a lot more speed of the corners, but he loses a lot of the time in the straights. It's going to be very difficult to overtake, and probably he'll have to do it through the tightest inner carousel section of the track.
And then he's gonna have to go really defensive on the back end of it, and oof, that is quite the move. Now he just has to make it stick.
He's now on the inside for the corner.
Yeah, this is where he can make it stick. Cannon did a good job backed out a little early. Now Cannon's gonna try to get on the power as soon as possible. You can see it. Oof. These
Very
guys
loose
are putting
entry there. You can see a lot of rear brake bias being used. Cannon needs to look for a good exit from these next two corners if he wants to get the position back.
I'd actually not be so worried if I was Cannon right now, and because if they look at this timing, Oldberg is actually keeping pretty decent times against Khan. So if they can just train pack together, they can actually catch up Khan and go for first. Of course, they might just go for the positions that they can easily get. But again, it's just a matter of, do you want to go for a short-term position, or with 13 minutes left, do you want to go for the win?
And do you think everyone else will do the same thing? Because if one person starts battling, that'll slow everyone else down.
Yep. These guys know each other though, they've raced against each other a lot. So, oof, looks like Cannon's decided to go for
a dive bomb. Contact.
Cannon really messed that up. I think he locked his brakes. It didn't look that intentional. I saw a little bit of smoke, especially.
They do all keep going, and Cannon lost a little bit of time.
Yep. It's definitely, at this point in time, if we do our calculations correctly, over 30 minutes of race time is effectively been put on the tires due to the 3 times tire acceleration. So, if you keep that in mind, I think the normal WEC endurance stints are like 45 minutes each, so you're definitely on very worn tires by now.
Now, I'm not sure if they simulate hard compound tires or dark tires.
I'm pretty
Either way,
sure
they don't tend to have particularly bad tire wear.
Yeah. I think these are more based off of the hard compound tires. But that's just me. It looks like these guys have chosen to race for position rather than going for the lead. This is definitely going to give Khan a huge lead in time.
With already 6 seconds, it would be quite difficult to catch back up.
Yep.
Esr goes. Oh, looks like almost got to slow down.
How unfortunate. But knowing Oldberg, he can definitely catch back up given enough time, especially with Cannon hot on the trail. We have some interesting banter in chat. So it looks like Mementos is Waed, and yeah, Tim's being silly and picking on him. as usual. Anyway. Definitely some really close racing.
Looks like Sturneby's managed to pull a bit of a gap here.
Looks
Once again,
like
very loose onto the entry.
8th, 9th, and 10th are really close to each other. Well, they were for a few seconds. Definitely. No,
they still are within 2 seconds of each other.
Yep.
At this point, Georgia has made its way to 8th in the Nissan.
Yep. He's got 10 minutes to go, and he has a lot of time to make up. 20 seconds to the next position. I don't know if he can do it, but he sure is gonna try. More interestingly, we're getting to see the BMW, which, to be honest, I honestly feel it's a little bit more of a slower car, but not by a massive margin. It's the aero-heavy car, and it's definitely very grippy as well.
The Mercedes is indeed.
And looking at first, second, and third, they're really battling. So let's switch back up there.
Side by side.
Yeah.
Looks like, again, the most difficult braking point on the track. We'll see if they can keep it together. Cannon cuts ahead.
Yep. Cannon's putting on a clinic, but as you can see, yeah, he wants the inside because that'll give him the inside on the carousel. But at the same time, it's very easy to go for the crossover. It's just such a difficult section of track, and so many passing opportunities are here.
You can see how light the BMW is going around the outside.
Yep.
Possibly also the front tyre we're contributing to that.
Yep. You can also see Oldberg's right there just looking for blood.
He gets caught back up indeed. As he looks to the inside. Not really a passing opportunity there.
You can also see how soft the suspensions are on these cars. A lot more body roll than you'd expect. Unfortunate corner for him, but, well, looks like he'll get some nice drafts, so that'll keep him in the battle.
Again, Auberger make his way back to second, it looks like what he's trying to do. Definitely got the speed on these two.
Yep. A nice thing about the BMW is it does tend to keep its time and its lap times up a lot better over the course of a race than the Mustang does. But again, we'll have to see how this continues.
Very sideways though. Definitely struggling to keep up.
That's a very good example of how you get a little bit of oversteer on a corner and make it fast. I mean, that's like text drift cornering. I mean, it's like, that reminds me of the old Formula 1, like the 60s and 70s tapes you see on occasion, like back when... Yeah.
I'll break every corner.
Speaking of old-style Formula 1 cars, the Formula Junior is going to be released soon on Race for Racing Experience, and that should be pretty interesting as well. Those are, shall we say, very interesting cars. Based off the Formula Ford, you don't get a whole lot of grip on your tires because you have limited to, as in, zero aerodynamic grip, and it's all mechanical. Not very powerful though, but it doesn't have to be.
Doesn't need to be very powerful. With so light as well, the Formula Ford cars make for some very close racing.
Yep.
If you're getting into Formula racing, Formula Ford is usually the first stop after go-karting. It would be very good to have in race room.
Definitely. Speaking of open-wheel light cars, an interesting to note is that the modern DTM cars, which these cars are kind of similar to, are very comparable to the Formula 3 cars, only they have a much more powerful engine. I mean,
yes, they have a similar lap time. I think the F3 cars are a bit faster. I mean, these cars, these 92 DTM cars, are almost, well, they're touring cars, whereas the modern DTM cars are very much silhouette cars, in that they have a new chassis, whereas these are based off the actual road chassis of the road cars.
Yep. Yep, but again, these cars, one thing that eventually is hinted at potentially being added is the sparks for these cars. One of the things that historical for them is they go over any bump, you get massive showers of sparks. Anyway, you can also see how much airtime they can get when you clip one of those bumps.
Especially the BMW. Look how much higher the BMW was next to the other cars. You can see underneath it, whereas the two Mustangs are a lot lower to the ground and take a lot less curb.
And it's almost 3 wide going into some of these corners. Really tight, really aggressive.
As Overly looks to the inside again and then cuts to the outside. Very aggressively.
Just need to been requested to check Paul Darkey for just a second, so hopefully these guys don't get into too much trouble while we're gone. And it looks like Darkey has limited to no lag, so that's fine. So back to the competition.
BMW now coming into its strongest section. We have seen the BMW do a lot of late braking and a lot of speed to the tight corners actually.
Ooh,
as
Oldberg really
runs
went
very
off.
wide. The grass. Still holds position though.
That really slowed down Sternby, and that's really unfortunate for him because now Kennan's got a gap. If Kennan can really hold his own, there's no way he can get first, but he can definitely build a bigger gap to second, or to third, and definitely hold second. And again, it's really down to who pushes the hardest. Looks like we had another dropout.
Once again, pulling to the outside on the straight, on the corner exit.
With 3 minutes to go, and with a small gap between these two guys, let's take a look at how the leader is faring for one lap. Shall we? As you can see, the car's definitely a little on the loose side, but he's holding it together very nicely.
The Volvo does tend to be quite loose.
Yep, but especially for how long the race is. And through the carousels, you can definitely see a lot of body roll as well, and a lot of track used as well.
As he's catching up to some of that traffic.
Yeah. I guess people go see Darkey again, because they're asking to, shortly. So now we'll know for sure if he's got any warping issues. So it looks like Darkey's not warping at all, so it looks like the new Amazon servers fixed all that issue. Having a little bit of frame skip on my preview though, so apologies. So that's basically one lap from the leader's view. Let's get back to the battle and play. As you can see, the gap itself. Kennan's doing a very good job of holding it, but they've caught back up to him by a pretty good margin. So now let's take a look from the rear end of Tim Kennan to see how it looks like in his mirror. And from that view, you can just see how steep the hill is over here. And just how close the racing is as well.
Coming to the most difficult corner once again, this braking zone. We'll see if the rear snaps round for him, as it does.
And I have to say, it's really nice to have such amazing views available in this spectator mode. As, again, imagine if you could get these kinds of camera angles all the time in modern racing broadcasts. And you can see a cone go way high.
As Sternby runs off the track a bit into the gravel and hits a cone.
Yeah, Yeah, that was the highest cone I've seen in a while.
It might go hit the 0-0 cone. I believe it's above this corner.
With a minute left, this is pretty much going to be the best view to see how the race finishes out. Let's see if any passing move gets made. Actually, we might get another lap after this, but I doubt it.
Looks like this is going to be the last lap. It also looks like the Nissan of Georgia is in the pits.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. But yeah, it's such a hard car. Oof. Well, it looks like
As
they
they
got
overlap Paul Dark, the Mercedes.
Yep.
He gets out of the way nicely.
Very good, respectful driving from his part. Definitely don't want to get in the way of a major battle.
At this point the gap looks relatively stable, unless someone makes a mistake. I'm not sure, there's one more lap left or not.
Well, now let's, yeah, they definitely spaced out a bit more coming into the end. Definitely. I think Oldberg is definitely holding his own, but I'm more about Stern. The BMW's definitely looks like it's lost a lot of oh, Cannon, really not good. He got the position, but he's gonna have a headache after that.
I think that was a celebration, was it not?
Yeah. Well, that's the race. With Khan taking the lead, Cannon taking second, Oldberg taking third, Stratby taking fourth, Mons taking fifth, Allegros taking sixth, Kenny taking seventh, Stevens taking eighth, Mary Pabarn taking ninth, Darke taking 10th, and Georgiev taking 11th. All of whom did a spectacular job racing, and again, really surprisingly, really good performance, very good competition.
And a very good turnout by all the drivers, thanks for coming.
Yep. This just showcases how much potential there is for the upcoming championship. Anyway, it was a nice, wonderful series of races. So from our studios, we wish you a great day and have a good night.